Why your desires aren't arriving yet? This question sounds simple, but for many people, it carries years of frustration, silent disappointment, and confusion. You visualize, you plan, you work, you wait, and still, nothing seems to move. Others appear to get what they want effortlessly, while you feel stuck in a loop of almosts. Almost there, almost ready, almost happening. And the longer it takes, the more you start wondering if something is wrong with you. But here's the truth most people never hear. Desires don't fail because they're unrealistic. They fail because they're misaligned. We're taught to believe that wanting something intensely is enough, that if you think about it often, talk about it confidently, and stay positive, the universe will eventually reward you. But desire alone doesn't create movement. Desire is only the signal. What determines arrival is everything happening behind that desire, often unconsciously. Let me give you an example that hits closer to home than most motivational advice ever will. Imagine someone who says they want financial freedom. They repeat it daily. They visualize abundance. They even work hard. But every time money actually gets close, they feel anxious. They delay decisions. They undercharge. They sabotage opportunities. Not because they don't want success, but because deep down they associate money with pressure, conflict, or loss of identity. Their conscious desire says, "I want more," while their subconscious says, "This isn't safe." The subconscious always wins. This is why your desires may feel like they're circling you but never landing. Another example, relationships. You say you want love, connection, depth, but silence makes you uncomfortable. Being alone feels like failure. So you attract people who fill space, not people who meet you deeply. Then you wonder why the relationships feel empty. Your desire is connection, but your behavior is avoidance. Avoidance of yourself. Again, misalignment. Desires don't respond to words. They respond to states. And your dominant state isn't what you say you want. It's how you live when no one is watching. Most people try to manifest from the surface. They polish affirmations, refine goals, optimize routines, but they never address the deeper resistance underneath, the fear of change, the fear of outgrowing familiar pain, the fear that if you get what you want, you'll lose who you are or who others expect you to be. Here's the uncomfortable part. Sometimes desires don't arrive because they would collapse the version of you that's currently surviving, and survival resists transformation. This is why timing feels cruel, why effort doesn't always equal results, why patience feels exhausting instead of peaceful. It's not punishment, it's preparation, whether you're aware of it or not. If this perspective already feels different from what you usually hear, take a moment to support the channel by liking the video and subscribing. It helps this kind of deeper, more honest content reach people who are tired of shallow answers. Now, there's something even more important to understand. Many desires are delayed not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're trying to receive with an identity that can't hold what you're asking for yet. Growth isn't just about adding things to your life, it's about subtracting patterns that no longer fit. Think of it like this. If your current mindset, habits, and emotional patterns created your present reality, why would repeating them produce a different future? Something has to change internally before anything changes externally. Desires don't respond to words, they respond to states. And your dominant state isn't what you say you want, it's how you live when no one is watching. Most people try to manifest from the surface. They polish affirmations, refine goals, optimize routines, but they never address the deeper resistance underneath, the fear of change, the fear of outgrowing familiar pain, the fear that if you get what you want, you'll lose who you are or who others expect you to be. Here's the uncomfortable part. Sometimes desires don't arrive because they would collapse the version of you that's currently surviving, and survival resists transformation. This is why timing feels cruel, why effort doesn't always equal results, why patience feels exhausting instead of peaceful. It's not punishment, it's preparation, whether you're aware of it or not. If this perspective already feels different from what you usually hear, take a moment to support the channel by liking the video and subscribing. It helps this kind of deeper, more honest content reach people who are tired of shallow answers. Now, there's something even more important to understand. Many desires are delayed not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're trying to receive with an identity that can't hold what you're asking for yet. Growth isn't just about adding things to your life, it's about subtracting patterns that no longer fit. Think of it like this. If your current mindset, habits, and emotional patterns created your present reality, why would repeating them produce a different future? Something has to change internally before anything changes externally. Desires don't respond to words, they respond to states. And your dominant state isn't what you say you want, it's how you live when no one is watching. Most people try to manifest from the surface. They polish affirmations, refine goals, optimize routines, but they never address the deeper resistance underneath, the fear of change, the fear of outgrowing familiar pain, the fear that if you get what you want, you'll lose who you are or who others expect you to be. There's a phase almost no one talks about, the space between desire and arrival. That invisible stretch of time where nothing seems to confirm you're on the right path. No signs, no reassurance, just effort, waiting, and doubt quietly testing you. This phase is where most people give up, not because the desire is impossible, but because the silence feels like rejection. But silence, once again, is not absence, it's calibration. When a desire doesn't arrive, life is often asking a very specific question. Are you willing to become the person who naturally lives with this outcome, even if it means losing familiar versions of yourself? That question is uncomfortable because it exposes attachment. Not attachment to the desire itself, but attachment to old patterns that conflict with it. Consider someone who wants freedom of time, location, expression, but their sense of worth is tied to being needed, approved of, or constantly busy. If freedom arrived tomorrow, it would dismantle the identity they've built for years. So unconsciously, they delay it. They choose obligations over expansion, not because they're weak, but because identity change feels like death before it feels like growth. This is why so many desires hover just out of reach. They're not blocked by effort, they're blocked by identity lag. Another example, someone wants confidence, real confidence, but they still outsource self-worth to comparison, likes, praise, external validation. If confidence arrived before that dependency dissolved, it wouldn't last. So life stretches the timeline. It forces experiences that expose insecurity again and again, not to punish, but to train self-trust. Here's what's crucial to understand. Delays are often invitations to release emotional contracts you didn't know you signed. Contracts like, if I succeed, I must not disappoint anyone. If I'm seen, I must be perfect. If I get what I want, I'll be alone. If I change, I'll lose love. These beliefs operate quietly beneath conscious awareness, and as long as they run in the background, your desires meet resistance, not because you don't deserve them, but because your system is protecting you from perceived danger. This is where frustration becomes meaningful. Frustration is not a sign to quit, it's a signal that your current way of holding the desire is outdated. You're trying to pull the future into a version of you that can't host it yet. And the shift doesn't come from forcing patience or pretending to be grateful all the time. It comes from asking better questions. Instead of, why isn't this working? Ask, what part of me is still afraid of this actually working? Instead of, what am I missing? Ask, what am I still holding on to that no longer fits where I'm going? Those questions don't produce instant answers, but they change your posture. You move from chasing to listening, from control to clarity. If you're finding this perspective helpful, this is a good moment to pause and support the channel by leaving a like and subscribing. It helps keep conversations like this alive, the kind that don't just motivate, but actually reorient you. There's also something subtle that delays desires: emotional noise. Wanting something too desperately can paradoxically push it away. Not because desire is bad, but because desperation carries a message of lack, and life tends to mirror the state you inhabit most consistently. Think of how different it feels to want something calmly versus needing it urgently. Calm desire feels open. Urgent desire feels contracted. One says, "I trust myself with or without this." The other says, "I can't be okay unless this happens." Life responds differently to those frequencies. This doesn't mean you should suppress desire. It means you should detach your identity from the outcome. When who you are depends on what arrives, pressure enters the system, and pressure distorts timing. Often desires arrive right after you stop gripping them, not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped needing them to validate you. That moment isn't giving up, it's integration.
There's a moment, quiet, almost unnoticeable, when everything begins to shift. Not because your desire suddenly appears, but because you stop chasing it from a place of tension. This is usually when people say, "It happened when I least expected it," but that's not entirely true. It happened when they were no longer trying to extract meaning, worth, or safety from the outcome. By this stage, something inside you has softened. You've stopped negotiating with life. You've stopped demanding proof that you're on the right path. And without realizing it, you've become more present, more grounded, less desperate to arrive somewhere else in order to feel complete. This is the version of you that desires respond to. Because desires aren't rewards, they're reflections. They reflect who you are being consistently, not who you hope to become someday. When your inner state stabilizes, the external world reorganizes around it, not instantly, not theatrically, but precisely. Think about people who seem to attract opportunities effortlessly. It's not because they want less, it's because they're not fragmented inside. Their actions, values, and self-image are aligned. There's no internal argument happening every time something good approaches, so life doesn't meet resistance. Contrast that with someone who is constantly torn, wanting change but fearing consequences, craving growth but clinging to familiarity. That internal contradiction slows everything down, not as punishment, but as protection. This is why forcing manifestation techniques often backfires. They try to override what needs to be resolved instead of resolving it. You can't bypass integration, you can only live through it. And integration looks deceptively simple. Saying no when you used to overextend, choosing rest without guilt, letting go of timelines that were never yours, releasing the need to explain yourself, acting from clarity instead of urgency. These are not dramatic shifts, but they are powerful ones because they signal self-trust. At this stage, something interesting happens. You stop asking, "When will it arrive?" and start asking, "How do I want to live today?" And ironically, that's when life accelerates. Not because you stopped wanting, but because you stopped waiting. Waiting implies suspension. Presence implies readiness. Your desires aren't late. They're responding to the version of you that's still forming. And the moment that version stabilizes, even slightly, movement begins. Sometimes subtly, sometimes suddenly, but always meaningfully. If this video helped reframe how you see delays, desire, and alignment, take a moment now to support the channel by subscribing and leaving a like. It allows this depth of conversation to continue and reach people who are quietly questioning their own path. Before we end, let this land. You don't attract what you obsess over. You attract what you're prepared to live with calmly. So instead of asking what's missing, ask what's ready to be released. Instead of forcing outcomes, refine your state. Instead of measuring time, measure alignment. Your desires aren't arriving late. They're arriving accurately.